The distress signal came through at the worst possible time. Hyun was 3 days into a supply run to the outer colonies, his cargo hold full of medical supplies and food rations. The last thing he needed was a detour, but the signal was close, maybe an hour off his route. He stared at the blinking red dot on his navigation screen and cursed under his breath. Every instinct told him to ignore it. Distress signals in deep space were usually traps set by pirates or scavengers looking for easy prey. But something about this one felt different. The frequency was old, official, the kind used by government vessels decades ago. Hyun drummed his fingers on the controls, then sighed and changed course. When he arrived at the coordinates, what he found made his stomach drop. A massive ship hung dead in space, its hull torn open in multiple places. Debris floated around it, like a cloud of metal and glass. The vessel was beautiful, even in its destruction. Built with elegant curves and shimmering metal that seemed to catch light that wasn't there. This was no ordinary ship. Hyun ran a scan. Life support was failing. Power was at 15%. The hull breaches were catastrophic. Whoever had attacked this ship had been thorough. He was about to leave when his scanner picked up a single life sign, weak but present. Deep in the ship's interior, he locked his ship onto the damaged vessel and grabbed his emergency kit. The airlock hissed as he crossed over, his boots maglocking to the deck. Inside, the carnage was worse. Bodies lay in the corridors, all of them wearing what looked like ceremonial armor. Guards, Hyun realized, elite ones, from the quality of their equipment. They had fought hard but lost. He followed his scanner deeper into the ship, through corridors lined with strange art and materials he couldn't name. Everything spoke of wealth and power. When he reached the source of the life sign, he found himself in a massive chamber that looked like a throne room or ceremonial space. At the center, collapsed against a raised platform, was a woman. Haeon approached carefully, weapon ready. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen. Her skin had a faint luminescent quality, like moonlight on water. Crystalline patterns traced along her neck and arms, catching the emergency lighting. Her clothing was torn and blood-stained, but even damaged. It was clearly made from materials worth more than his entire ship. She was unconscious, but breathing. A deep wound crossed her shoulder, and her left arm was bent at a wrong angle. Hugh knelt beside her and checked her pulse. It was there, but irregular. He had maybe an hour to get her stabilized before she went into shock. The ship shuddered. His scanner screamed a warning. 3 vessels were approaching fast, the same signature as the ships that had attacked this one. Raiders coming back to finish the job or claim salvage. Hyun had seconds to decide. He could leave her and escape. He could try to hide and hope they didn't find him. Or he could do something monumentally stupid. He scooped the woman into his arms, surprised at how light she felt, and ran. The journey back to his ship was a nightmare. The raiders were already boarding, their weapons fire echoing through the corridors. Haeon took side passages, doubled back twice, and at one point had to drag them both through a gap in the hull barely wide enough to fit. The woman stirred once, her eyes opening briefly. They were the color of deep space, with flecks that seemed to move like stars. She looked at him with an expression he couldn't read, then passed out again. He got her to his ship with raiders on his heels. The airlock sealed just as weapons fire sparked against his hull. Hyun threw himself into the pilot's seat and punched the engines to maximum. The ship lurched forward, alarms screaming as he pushed the systems beyond their limits. The raiders gave chase. For 10 minutes, Hyun flew like his life depended on it, because it did. He used every trick he knew, every dirty maneuver he had learned in 15 years of running freight in dangerous space. Finally, he managed to lose them in an asteroid field. His ship's smaller size letting him thread gaps they couldn't follow when he was sure they were gone. Hyun set the autopilot and went to check on his passenger. She was still unconscious on the floor where he had left her. He carried her to the small medical bay, nothing more than a bunk with a first aid station, and got to work. His medical training was basic, or learned from necessity rather than school, but he did what he could. He cleaned the wound on her shoulder, sealed it with medical foam, and splinted her arm. Her biology was different enough from human that he wasn't sure what would help and what might hurt. So he stuck to the basics and hoped. She woke on the second day. Hyun was running system checks when he heard movement from the medical bay. He found her sitting up, confused and clearly in pain, trying to understand where she was. "Easy," he said, holding up his hands. "You're safe. You were injured. I'm Han." She stared at him, and he saw the moment she remembered. Her hand went to her shoulder, feeling the bandage. When she spoke, it was in a language he didn't understand, musical and complex. She saw his confusion and touched something on her neck. A small device there flickered to life. "You saved me," she said, her voice now in accented but clear English. "Why?" Huyen shrugged. "You needed help. You risked your life for a stranger." "Yeah, well, seemed like the thing to do." She studied him with those impossible eyes. "I am Arin. You have changed the course of stars, hewn of Earth." He didn't know what that meant, and the way she said it made him uncomfortable. "I just happened to be there." "What happened to your ship?" Pain crossed her face. "Betrayal. An attack I did not foresee. My guards died protecting me." She looked down at her hands. "I am the last." "The last what?" But she didn't answer, exhaustion pulling her back towards sleep. Over the next day, she recovered slowly. Hyun brought her food, water, checked her injuries. She watched him with curiosity, asking questions about his ship, his life, why he traveled alone. He answered some, deflected others. On the third day, she was strong enough to stand. She found him in the cockpit, staring out at the stars. "Where are you taking me?" she asked. "There's a trading station 2 days from here. Neutral territory. You can contact your people from there." She was quiet for a long time. "And if I do not wish to contact them yet?" Hyun turned to look at her. In the starlight, she seemed almost to glow. "Why wouldn't you?" "Perhaps I need time to ensure it is safe. Perhaps I need time to understand who betrayed me." She met his eyes. "Perhaps I am not ready to return to what waits for me." Something in her voice made Hyun's chest tighten. He recognized that tone. He had used it himself more times than he could count. It was the sound of someone running from something they couldn't escape. "2 days to the station," he said finally. "After that, it's your choice." She smiled, and for the first time, it reached her eyes. "Thank you, Hyun." As she left the cockpit, Hyun turned back to the stars and wondered what he had gotten himself into. In his experience, saving beautiful strangers never ended well. But when he remembered those eyes looking at him in the throne room, the trust in her expression when she woke, he knew he would make the same choice again. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, and for the first time in years, Hyun wasn't flying alone. The trading station appeared on their screens like a small city floating in the void. Hundreds of ships docked at its arms, and lights flickered from thousands of windows. Hyun had been coming here for years. The owner, an old alien named Cole, asked no questions and kept his mouth shut. It was exactly the kind of place Arn needed. Hyun's ship needed repairs after the chase through the asteroid field. The port engine was damaged, and several hull plates needed replacement. While mechanics worked, Hyun found himself showing Arn around the station. She had revealed little about herself in the past 2 days. He knew she was important, someone of rank or wealth. But she deflected his questions with the same skill he used to deflect hers. They had reached an unspoken agreement not to push too hard into each other's pasts. The station amazed her. Han watched as she stared at the main market, where hundreds of species bartered and traded. Merchants called out in a dozen languages. The smell of exotic foods mixed with engine oil and ozone. Children from 3 different worlds ran past, chasing each other in some universal game. "I have never seen anything like this," Arn said softly. Hyun raised an eyebrow. "Really? You seem like someone who has traveled." "I have, but always in official capacity. Always surrounded by guards and protocols." She touched a display of fabric, running her fingers over the bright colors. Never like this. Never free to simply walk and look. Something in her voice made Hyun understand. She wasn't just nobility. She was trapped by it. They ate at a small restaurant on the upper level, where the viewport showed the curve of space. Aaron tried human food for the first time and made a face at the spice level. Ian laughed, the sound surprising him. When was the last time he had laughed? "Tell me about Earth," she said. "Your homeworld." "Aunt. Haven't been back in 15 years, Ian said. "Left when I was 20. Nothing there for me. Why?" He was quiet for a moment. "Family trouble. The kind that doesn't get better with time." He changed the subject. "What about you? Where are you from?" She gestured to the stars. "Far from here. A world you have probably never heard of." "I'll try." "Me, Valthor." Heian nearly choked on his. Drink Valthar, the Valthari Empire. Controlled 70 star systems and had technology. Centuries beyond most of the galaxy, they were. Powerful, ancient, and their leaders were essentially gods to their people. "You're Valthari," he said slowly. "I am. And those guards on your ship? That armor they wore? Royal guards. The best our empire has." Hune leaned back, his mind racing. "So what does that make you? A princess? A duchess?" Aaron met his eyes. "Does it matter? I guess not. You'll be gone soon anyway." Something flickered across her face. Pain, maybe, or regret. "Yes, I will." The repairs took 3 days instead of 2. Heian told himself he was annoyed by the delay, but he knew he was lying. Every extra hour meant more time with Aaron. They fell into an easy rhythm. Mornings, he checked on the repairs while she studied the station's library databases. Afternoons, they explored together. She showed him Valthari meditation techniques. He taught her how to play cards. She talked about politics and philosophy. He told her stories about the strange places he had been, the people he had met. They argued about everything from ship design to food preferences, and somehow, even the arguments felt good. On the 3rd night, they found themselves in the station's garden dome. Someone with money and a love of beauty had created a space filled with plants from 100 worlds. Bioluminescent flowers glowed soft blue. Vines with silver leaves climbed structures that looked like crystal. In the center, a pool of water reflected the stars visible through the clear dome above. They sat on a bench near the pool. The station's artificial night cycle had dimmed the lights, and they were alone. "I should contact my people tomorrow," Aaron said. "They will be searching for me." "Probably worried sick," Heian agreed. "Yes," she was quiet. "When they come, everything changes. Back to protocols and guards, back to duty, to responsibility." She turned to look at him. "I have been free for 5 days. 5 days in my entire life where I could be just Aaron. Not a title, not a role. Just myself," Hune understood. He had spent 15 years being just Hune, running from the weight of expectations and family legacy. It's not all perfect. Being alone. Being free. Sometimes it's just lonely. Is that why you saved me? You were lonely? I saved you because it was right. But keeping you around? He smiled. Maybe that was loneliness. Or stupidity. Haven't decided yet. She laughed, the sound like music. I think it was kindness. You are kind, Hume, even when you pretend not to be. Their eyes met, and something shifted in the air between them. Hune was suddenly very aware of how close they were sitting, how the blue light made her skin glow, how she was looking at him like he was the only person in the galaxy. This is a bad idea, he said. Quietly terrible, she agreed. You're leaving tomorrow. I must. And we're from different worlds, literally. We are. So we should. Probably she kissed him, cutting off whatever logical thing he was about to say. For a moment, he froze, shocked. Then he kissed her back, his hand coming up to cup her face. She tasted like starlight and mystery. Every logical thought in his head disappeared. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Aaron smiled. Still thinking it is a bad idea? The worst, Hyon said, and kissed her again. They spent the night together in his ship, the small cabin that barely fit the bed. They talked and laughed and discovered each other in the darkness. Arn traced the scars on his body, each one a story. Hyun mapped the crystalline patterns on her skin with his fingers, learning her like he would learn a new star chart. In those hours, there was no empire, no duty, no past or future, just two people who had found something rare and precious in the vast loneliness of space. Morning came too soon. Hyun woke to find Arn already dressed, standing by the viewport. She looked different, her posture straighter, her expression more controlled. She was putting her armor back on, the invisible kind that leaders wore. "They're here," she said softly. Hyun looked out the viewport and saw them. A dozen Valkyrie warships had appeared at the edge of the station's space, their hulls gleaming like jewels. The smallest was twice the size of anything else docked here. "That's quite a search party," he said. "I told you. I am important to my people." "How important?" She turned to face him. "I am their queen, Hyun. I rule the Valkyrie Empire." The words hit him like a physical blow. Queen. Not a princess or noble. The queen. He had spent 5 days with one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and she had let him see her as just a person. "You could have told me," he said. "Would it have changed anything?" "I don't know. Maybe. That is why I did not tell you." She crossed the small space between them. "These days with you, they were the most real days of my life. I did not want rank or title between us, and now. Now I must ask you something." She took his hand. "Come with me. Be part of my life. I can give you anything you want. Position, wealth, purpose." Hyun wanted to say yes. The word was right there on his tongue, but he looked past her to those massive warships, thought about life in a palace, surrounded by protocols and expectations. He had run from that kind of life once. He couldn't walk into it again, even for her. "I can't," he said finally. "That's not my world, Arn. I wouldn't survive it. And you know it." The pain crossed her face, but she nodded. "I know, but I had to ask. Your people need you, and I need to keep moving. It's what I do." She stood on her toes and kissed him one last time, soft and gentle and full of goodbye. "Then this is where our paths separate." "Seems like it." She pulled back, her hand lingering on his face. "Thank you, Han, for saving my life. For these 5 days, for seeing me as just Arn. Take care of yourself, Your Majesty." She smiled sadly. "And you, my brave human?" He watched as she left his ship, her head held high. A formal escort was waiting, guards in that same ceremonial armor he had seen on her ship. They surrounded her immediately, a wall of protection. She didn't look back. Within hours, the Valkyrie fleet was gone. Hyun sat alone in his cockpit, staring at the empty space where they had been. His ship was repaired. His cargo was still waiting for delivery. Everything was back to normal, except nothing felt normal anymore. He engaged his engines and set course for the outer colonies, running like he always did, trying to outrun the feeling that he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. 5 years had passed since that night on the trading station. 5 years since Arn had watched Hyun's ship disappear into the black. Taking a piece of her heart with it, she stood now in her private chambers, looking out at the garden where her son was playing. Minho was 5 years old, bright and curious, the dark human eyes and the faint luminescent patterns of his Valkyrie heritage. He was chasing butterflies, creatures brought from Earth specifically because he had asked to see them. Every day he looked more like his father. "He is asking about Han again," Jiwon said from the doorway. Arn's intelligence chief was one of the few people who knew the truth. Loyal beyond measure, Jiwon had helped keep Minho's existence a secret for 5 years. What did he ask? Where his father is? Why he cannot meet him? Whether his father knows about him? Kwon moved to stand beside her. The questions grow harder to answer. Arn watched Minho laugh as a butterfly landed on his hand. Half-human children were not supposed to be possible. The biology was too different. But somehow, impossibly, Minho existed. The doctors called him a miracle. Oren called him her greatest joy and her deepest secret. "He deserves to know his father," Oren said quietly. "And if Haeon does not wish to be found, then at least I tried. At least Minho will know I tried." It was a decision she had been avoiding for 5 years. Finding Heen meant exposing her vulnerability, risking diplomatic complications, and possibly facing rejection. But every time Minho asked about his father, the reasons not to search seemed less important. "Assemble a team," Arn said. "Small. Discreet. We leave in 3 days." Jiwan nodded. "And the boy?" "Stays here. Safe." Arn's voice was firm. "I will not risk him until I know what we are walking into." The search proved harder than expected. Hyun had vanished completely after that trading station. His ship registration had been changed twice. He used different names in different sectors. It was like he was actively trying to disappear, but Jiwan was relentless. They followed whispers through smuggler networks and information brokers. Hyun had become something of a legend in certain circles. The human who helped refugees, the pilot who took jobs protecting the weak, the man who never stayed in one place. Each piece of information was small, but together they formed a pattern. Hyun was still running, still alone, still helping people who needed it. After 3 months of searching, they got a confirmed sighting. A colony world called Tarsus 9 was being invaded by a corporate military force. Refugees were fleeing by the thousands. And there, in the middle of the chaos, running supply lines and evacuation routes, was Hunarn made the decision immediately. She would go herself. Jiwan argued against it, citing security risks and the political implications of a queen entering an active war zone. But Arn was firm. She had let Hyen walk away once. She would not send messengers to bring him back. They left Minho in the care of Ern's sister, Daeon. The boy was not happy about it. "I want to meet him," Minho insisted, his small hands balled into fists. "You will," Arn promised, kneeling to his level. "But first, I need to find him. I need to make sure it is safe."
What?
"If he does not want to meet me." The fear in his voice broke her heart. "Then I will tell him what an amazing, brave, wonderful son he has. And if he still does not want to meet you, that is his loss, not yours." Minho hugged her tightly. "Bring him home, mother." "I will try my star. I will try." The journey to Tarsus 9 took 2 weeks. Arn used the time to prepare what she would say. How do you tell someone they have a son they never knew about? How do you ask someone who values freedom to be part of something permanent? When they arrived in orbit around Tarsus 9, the situation was worse than reports had suggested. Corporate warships blockaded the planet. Orbital bombardments had destroyed major cities. Refugee camps dotted the southern continent. Overcrowded and desperate, Jiwan's intelligence network located Hyun in the largest refugee camp. He was coordinating supply drops with a small group of volunteers, now working 20-hour days to evacuate as many people as possible before the corporate forces advanced. Arn watched him on the surveillance feed. 5 years had changed him. His hair had threads of gray. New scars marked his face and arms. He looked tired, harder, but his eyes were the same. Those eyes that had looked at her with such kindness on a damaged ship 5 years ago. "How do you want to approach?" Jaewon asked. "I go alone." "Queen alone, Jaewon. He will run if I bring guards." "You know he will." Giwan did not argue further. They both knew she was right. Erin dressed simply, in clothes that would not mark her as royalty. She left her crown and formal jewelry behind. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She looked like the person she had been for 5 days on that trading station. Just Erin, the camp was chaos. Thousands of people crowded into temporary shelters. Children cried. Adults argued over supplies. Medical tents overflowed with the injured. Arn moved through it all. Following Jiwan's directions in her earpiece, she found Hyun near the landing pads, arguing with a supply coordinator about weight distributions. He was explaining with barely restrained patience that they could fit more people if they left behind half the luxury goods. Someone had tried to load. Oren stopped 10 feet away and just watched him. He was thinner than she remembered, his movements efficient and precise. When he turned to grab a data pad, he froze. Their eyes met across the crowded landing pad. For a moment, the chaos around them seemed to disappear. Hayen's expression went through shock, disbelief, and something that might have been pain. He crossed the distance between them in 5 strides. "What are you doing here?" "I needed to find you. Find me." His voice was rough. "Aaron, this is an active war zone. You should not be here. If something happened to you, I had to come. I had to tell you something." People were staring now. Hyun grabbed her arm and pulled her into a quieter area behind a supply container. "Tell me what? That you got tired of palace life? That you wanted to see how normal people struggle?" The anger in his voice surprised her. She had expected many reactions, but not this. "I came to tell you that you have a son." The words hit him like a weapon. Hyen's face went completely blank. "What?" "His name is Minho. He is 5 years old. He is healthy and brilliant, and he asks about you constantly." Hyun stumbled back, hitting the container behind him. "That is not possible. You said cross-species conception." "I know what I said. The doctors said it too. But somehow it happened. I was pregnant when I left the trading station. I did not know until 3 months later. 5 years. His voice was barely a whisper. "You kept this from me for 5 years?" "I tried to respect your choice. You said you could not be part of my world. I thought telling you would only hurt you." "Hurt me?" Haeon's laugh was harsh. "I have a son. A son I have never met. How could that hurt more than this?" Arn had prepared for many reactions. She had not prepared for the raw pain on his face. "I am sorry. I thought I was doing the right thing." Before Han could respond, alarms blared across the camp. Giwon's voice came through Arn's earpiece, urgent and sharp. "Corporate forces are advancing. The camp has maybe an hour before they are in firing range." Heen's expression changed instantly, all emotion locked away behind efficiency. "We need to evacuate now." He looked at Arn. "Get to your ship and leave." "I am not leaving these people. Ren, I am not leaving. My ships are in orbit. We can evacuate everyone if we coordinate properly." For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then Huyan nodded sharply. "Fine, but you follow my orders in the field." "Understood?" "Understood." What followed was organized chaos. Arn worked alongside Haeon, using her earpiece to coordinate with her ships while he organized the refugees. She saw why people spoke of him in legends. He was calm in the panic, firm but kind, making impossible decisions with a clarity that came from years of experience. When a group of civilians panicked and tried to rush a transport, Hyun stepped in front of them, arms spread. "I know you are scared. I know you want to leave. But if that ship takes off overloaded, everyone on it dies. We do this in order. Children and injured first. Everyone gets out. I promise. But you have to trust me." They trusted him. Arn watched in amazement as they formed lines, helped each other, followed his directions even as explosions sounded in the distance. She used her own people's technology to create shield barriers around the camp, buying them precious minutes. Hyun saw the barriers spring up and shot her a look of surprise and gratitude. They worked together as the sun set, and the sky filled with the fire of orbital bombardment. Each transport that left was a small victory. Each person saved was proof that their impossible cooperation was working. Finally, as enemy forces appeared on the horizon, the last transport lifted off. Heen did a final sweep of the camp, confirming it was empty. Arn waited at her ship's ramp, watching him run toward her. An explosion hit nearby. The blast threw Heen forward. Arn ran to him, helping him up. Blood ran from a cut on his temple, but he was alive. "Everyone out?" she asked. "Everyone." He looked at her ship, then at her. "I suppose we should talk." "Yes, we should." They lifted off as enemy artillery turned the camp into rubble. Haeon stood in the cargo bay, watching the destruction below. His hands were shaking. Arn stood beside him. "You saved them all. We saved them. Your shields bought us the time we needed," our son Arn said softly. "He has your courage." Hyun turned to face her fully. "Tell me about him, please." Arn brought up images on her datapad. Hyun stared at the screen like it held the secrets of the universe. The boy looking back at him had dark eyes, human eyes. "But with the faint, luminescent patterns of Valkyrie heritage tracing his cheeks. His smile was bright and curious. "This is from his 4th birthday," Arn said, swiping to another image. "He wanted an Earth-style celebration. We had cake and balloons." He did not understand why everyone found it strange. Heian's hand trembled as he reached toward the screen but did not touch it. "He looks like both of us. He has your stubbornness, your sense of right and wrong." Arn smiled softly. "He argues with his tutors when he thinks they are wrong. He refuses to follow rules that do not make sense. Last month, he freed all the ceremonial birds because he thought cages were cruel." Now, despite everything, Heian laughed. It sounded broken. "What did you do?" "I told him I understood why he did it, but actions have consequences. He helped recapture them all and apologized to the keeper." She looked at Heian. "Then I had the keeper redesign the enclosures to be larger and more natural, because he was right. The cages were cruel." Hyun sat down heavily on a cargo container. The adrenaline from the evacuation was wearing off, leaving him exhausted. "I have a son. I still cannot believe it." Arn sat beside him, keeping a respectful distance. "I know this is overwhelming. I had 9 months to prepare, and I was still not ready." "Right. Why now? Why tell me after 5 years?" "Because he started asking questions I could not answer." "Where is his father? Why did his father leave? Does his father know about him?" Arn's voice was quiet. "I could lie to myself about keeping you apart. I could not lie to him." Yoon rubbed his face with both hands. "I do not know how to be a father. I do not know anything about children. Neither did I learned." She pulled up another image. Minho was laughing, chasing butterflies in a garden. "He is a good child, Hyun. Kind and brave, and so full of questions. You would be proud of him. Can I meet him?" The question hung in the air between them. Arn had hoped he would ask, but hearing it still made her chest tight with relief and fear. "Yes, if you wish. But you need to understand what that means." She turned to face him fully. "Once he meets you, he will want you in his life. Children do not understand complicated adult reasons for distance. If you meet him and then leave, it will break his heart. Think I would do that? I think you are a man who values his freedom. Who runs when things get complicated?" She said it gently without accusation. "I need to know you are ready before I bring you to him." Hyun was quiet for a long time. Outside the viewport, stars stretched endlessly. The same stars he had been running through for 15 years. "I ran because I was scared," he said finally. "Scared of expectations. Scared of failing. My family wanted me to be something I was not, so I left." He looked at her. "When you asked me to come with you 5 years ago, I ran again. Because being with you meant being something I did not know how to be. And now I have a son who exists whether I know how to be a father or not. Running will not change that." He met her eyes. "I want to meet him. I want to try." Arn reached out and took his hand. "Then we go to Valthor together." The journey to the Valthori homeworld took a week. Heian spent it learning everything he could about Minho. Arn showed him videos, told him stories, explained his likes and dislikes. Minho loved puzzles and hated formal ceremonies. He could speak 4 languages, but refused to eat vegetables. He wanted to be a pilot like his father. "You told him about me?" Heian asked. "I told him you saved my life, that you were brave and kind, that you lived among the stars." Aaron smiled. "I made you into a story. Perhaps that was unfair, but I wanted him to be proud of his father. What if I am not what he imagined? Then you show him who you really are. Children are remarkably good at loving people for who they are, not who they are supposed to be." When Valthor appeared on the view screen, Hin understood why they called it a jewel world. 3 moons orbited the blue-green planet, and cities glittered across its surface like stars. It was beautiful and intimidating. Aaron's fleet met them in orbit. Massive warships that made Hyan's small vessel look like a toy. They escorted them to the surface, landing in a palace that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of crystal. Hyan stepped off the ship and immediately felt out of place. Everything was too big, too grand, too perfect. Guards in ceremonial armor lined the walkway. Officials waited to greet their queen. Hyun was suddenly very aware of his worn clothes and scarred hands. Arin must have sensed his discomfort. She dismissed most of the welcoming party with a few words, keeping only Jawan and a small escort. "You are my guest," she told Hayan. "You will be treated with honor." They walked through corridors that seemed to glow with their own light. Art that was centuries old hung on the walls. Everything spoke of history and power. Hyun felt like he was walking through a museum. "Where is he?" Hyun asked. "The garden. It is his favorite place." Ern led him through an archway into an open space that made Hayan stop and stare. The garden was massive, filled with plants from 100 worlds. Water flowed in streams that seemed to defy gravity. Structures of crystal and living wood created spaces of beauty and peace. And in the center, playing near a fountain, is a small boy. Minho was teaching something to a robotic companion, his hands moving as he explained. He was completely absorbed in his task, his face serious with concentration. He wore simple clothes, not the formal robes Hyun had feared, and his feet were bare. Minho Arn called softly. The boy looked up. When he saw his mother, his face lit up with joy. He ran to her, and she caught him in a hug. "You are back. Did you find him?" "I did." Arn set him down and turned him to face Hyun. "Minho, this is Hyun, your father." The boy's eyes went wide. He stared at Hyun with an intensity that was almost painful. Hyun knelt down, bringing himself to the boy's level. His throat felt tight. "Hello, Minho. You're real," Minho whispered. "I thought maybe Mother made you up." "I am real. I am sorry it took me so long to meet you." Minho took a step closer, studying Hyun's face with careful attention. "You have the same eyes as me?" "Yes, we do. Mother says you are a pilot." "A good one. I try to be. Will you teach me?" The question came out in a rush, eager and hopeful. "Will you show me your ship? Will you tell me about the places you have been?" Every question hit Haeon like a small miracle. This child, this impossible mix of human and alien, wanted to know him. Not for what he could provide or what role he could fill, but just to know him. "Yes," Haeon said, his voice rough with emotion. "I will teach you everything I know," Minho smiled, and it was like the sun coming out. Without warning, he threw his arms around Hyun's neck and hugged him fiercely. Hyun froze for a moment, then carefully wrapped his arms around the small body, holding his son for the first time. Over Minho's shoulder, Hyun saw Een watching them with tears in her eyes. She smiled at him, a smile full of hope and gratitude, and something that looked like love. The days that followed were strange and wonderful. Minho followed Haeon everywhere, asking endless questions. What was Earth like? What was his ship's name? Had he ever seen a black hole? Could they go fly together? Haeon answered as best he could, amazed by the boy's intelligence and curiosity. Minho was not just smart, he was brilliant. He understood complex concepts after a single explanation. He spoke multiple languages without effort. But more than that, he was kind. He thanked everyone who helped him. He shared his toys with other children in the palace. He cried when he heard about the refugees they had saved. "He has a good heart," Hyun told Arin one evening. They were watching Minho play in the garden from a balcony. "He gets that from you," she said. "You do not know that. I am not a particularly good person. You are a person who helps others when you do not have to, who risks your life for strangers, who came here even though you were scared." She looked at him. "That is good enough for Minho. It is good enough for me." Hyun wanted to respond, but movement below caught his eye. 3 figures had appeared near Minho. One of them was reaching for the boy. Instinct took over. Hyun vaulted over the balcony railing, dropping 2 stories and landing in a crouch. He crossed the garden in seconds and put himself between Minho and the figures. "Step back." They were wearing formal robes, not armor, but their intent was clear. One held a weapon, small but deadly. Assassins. "The half-breed is an abomination," one hissed in Valtheri. "He pollutes the royal line." "He is my son," Hyun said, his voice cold and deadly. "Touch him and die." Tact. Hyun moved with brutal efficiency, years of survival in dangerous places making him faster and more vicious than they expected. He broke the first one's arm, disarmed the second, and had the third on the ground in seconds. Palace guards arrived, weapons raised. Arn was with them, her face pale but controlled. "Take them," she ordered. As the assassins were dragged away, Heian turned to find Minho staring at him with wide eyes. "Father, you move like water." Despite everything, Heian smiled. "Your mother taught me that." That night after Minho was safely in bed, Ern found Heian on the same balcony. "You saved him." "Of course I did. He is my son. There will be more attempts. Some in my court see him as a threat. A human contamination of our bloodline." Heian's jaw clenched. "Then they are fools, yes, but dangerous fools." She stood beside him. "I cannot ask you to stay and face this. It is not fair to you. Is that what you think? That I would walk away because it is hard? I think you value your freedom. Being here, protecting him, that means giving up the life you have lived." Hyun was quiet, looking out at the alien stars. 5 years ago, you asked me to be part of your life. I said no, because I was scared. Because I thought I had to choose between freedom and connection. He turned to face her. I was wrong. These past days with Minho, they have not felt like a cage. They have felt like finally finding where I belong. Assassination attempt changed everything. Palace security was increased, but Aaron knew that was not enough. The threat was not just from outside, but from within. Members of her own court saw Minho as a problem to be eliminated. Aaron called a formal council meeting. Hyun stood beside her throne, uncomfortable in the formal clothes she had insisted he wear. The council chamber was filled with the most powerful figures in the Valkyrie Empire, all of them studying Heian with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Aaron's sister, Daeon, was among them. She had been kind to Minho, but cold to Heian. Now she stood and spoke. "My queen, we must address the human's presence. He has no title, no position, no formal standing. Yet he lives in the palace and has access to the air. He is Minho's father," Aaron said calmly. "A fact that complicates succession. The boy is half human. Already there are whispers that he is unfit to rule." Hyun felt anger rising, but kept his expression neutral. This was Aaron's world, and she needed to handle it her way. "My son is the heir," Aaron said, her voice sharp with authority. "Any who question that question me. As for Hyun, he is here at my invitation. He will stay as long as he chooses. And if he chooses to leave?" Another council member asked, "If he abandons the child again?" "I did not abandon him," Heian said, his voice cutting through the chamber. Every eye turned to him. "I did not know he existed. Now that I do, I will not leave him. Threaten me if you wish. Insult me if it makes you feel superior. But understand this, I am his father. Anyone who tries to harm him will answer to me." The chamber was silent. Then Daeon spoke again, and her voice was thoughtful. "You truly mean that? You would die for him, without hesitation?" Daeon studied him for a long moment. "Then perhaps there is hope for you yet, human. The boy needs his father, and his father has proven he will protect him. I say we accept this arrangement." Not everyone agreed, but Daeon's support shifted the mood. The council moved on to other matters, but Heian knew the debate was not over. It would never be over. Minho would face challenges his entire life because of what he was. After the meeting, Daeon approached Heian privately. "I apologize for my coldness. I was protecting my nephew. I needed to know you would not break his heart. I understand." "Do you?" "Because being his father means staying. It means facing assassins and political enemies. It means giving up your freedom to run." Her eyes were sharp. "Can you truly do that?" "I already have," Hyun said. "The moment I saw him, I was his. There is no going back from that." Daeon smiled slightly. "Good, because if you hurt him, or my sister, I will hunt you across the galaxy." Noted. Over the next weeks, Heian tried to find his place in this strange new life. The palace felt like a prison at first, all protocols and formality, but Minho made it bearable. The boy was a constant source of joy and questions. Why do stars burn? How do ships travel faster than light? What is Earth like? Can we go there someday? Hyun answered each question as best he could, and when he did not know, they looked it up together. He taught Minho about ship mechanics and navigation. Minho taught him Valkyrie history and customs. They learned from each other, but Heian could see the palace was not good for either of them. Minho needed space to run and explore. He needed to see the universe beyond palace walls. And Heian needed to breathe, to fly, to feel like himself again. One night, he approached Arin with an idea. "I want to take Minho on a supply run." Arin looked up from the report she was reading. "Absolutely not. Hear me out. A safe route. Well-traveled space. Just a few days. Let him see what it is like out there. He is 5 years old. I was flying with my father at 5. Before everything went wrong, before the expectations and pressure, those flights were the best part of my childhood." Hyun sat across from her. "He is suffocating here, Arin. I can see it. He needs to spread his wings, and if something happens, if he is hurt or taken, then I will die getting him back. But nothing will happen. I promise you." Ren was quiet for a long time. "You are asking me to trust you with the most precious thing in my life.
I know.
And I am telling you that he is the most precious thing in mine too. I will guard him with everything I have." Finally, Arin nodded. 1 week. A safe route. And Juan goes with you. Deal. Preparing for the trip was an adventure in itself. Minho was so excited he could barely sleep. He helped Hoyan check every system on the ship, asking questions about each one. Giwan watched with amusement, her usual stern expression softening. "The boy is brilliant," she told Heian. "You'll be a fine leader someday. If he survives those who hate him, you'll survive," Hyun said firmly. "I will make sure of it." The morning they left, Arin came to see them off. She hugged Minho tightly. "Listen to your father. Be safe. Come home to me." "I will, Mother. I promise." Minho turned to Heian. "Can we go now? Please." Hyun looked at Arin over their son's head. She looked terrified and hopeful at the same time. He gave her a small nod. "Trust me," she nodded back. "I do." The first jump to hyperspace made Minho scream with delight. He pressed his face to the viewport, watching the stars stretch into lines. "This is amazing. Can we go faster?" "Not unless you want to arrive as particles instead of people," Hyun said, but he smiled. They visited 3 different stations over the week. Hyun showed Minho the same things Arin had shown him years ago. The markets where 100 species traded. The observation decks, where you could see nebulas and star clusters. The small restaurants where food was made with love instead of ceremony. Minho was fascinated by everything. He tried foods from a dozen worlds, learned phrases and languages Han did not know he knew, and made friends with children of other species. He was fearless and kind, and watching him made Hyan's chest ache with pride. On the 4th day, they delivered supplies to a small mining colony. The people there were grateful, offering them a meal as thanks. Minho sat with the miners, listening to their stories, asking about their work. One old miner, Human, studied Minho carefully. "You got human in you, boy." "Half human," Minho said proudly. "My father is human." The miner looked at Hen. "That's so? You did good, raising a boy with manners like that." After they left, Minho was quiet. Finally he asked, "Father, do people hate me because I am half human?" Hyun considered lying, but Minho deserved the truth. "Some do. They think you should be one thing or another, not both. But they are wrong." "How are they wrong?" "Because being both makes you special. You can see the universe from 2 perspectives. You can understand things neither humans nor Valkyrie can understand alone." Hyun put his hand on Minho's shoulder. "People fear what they do not understand. But that is their problem, not yours." Minho thought about this. "I like being both. I like having you and Mother, and we like having you." On their last night, they camped on an uninhabited moon with breathable atmosphere. Hyun set up a tent while Minho explored Jiwon, watching him carefully. When the sun set, the sky filled with stars so thick they looked like clouds of light. They lay on their backs, looking up. Minho was pressed against Hyan's side, warm and solid. "Which one is Earth?" Minho asked. Hyun pointed. "That direction, but too far to see." Maybe someday we will visit. And Valthor, the other direction. We are in between, right in the middle. I like the middle, Minho said sleepily. You can see everything from the middle. Haeong pulled the boy closer. Yes, you can. When they returned to the palace, Arin was waiting. Minho ran to her, talking so fast his words tumbled over each other. He told her everything they had seen and done, his eyes bright with joy. Arin listened to it all. But her eyes were on Han. When Minho finally ran off to tell his aunt about the trip, she approached Haeon. Thank you, she said softly. I have never seen him so happy. He needed it. We both did. And now? What happens now? Haeon took her hand. Now we figure out how to do this. How to raise him together. How to keep him safe while letting him be free. How to be a family even though nothing about us is traditional. It will not be easy. Nothing worthwhile is. He smiled. But I am done running, Arin. From you, from him, from this. I am where I am supposed to be. She kissed him then, soft and sweet. A promise of future nights and stolen moments between duty and danger. Over the next months, they found their rhythm. Hien split his time between the palace and space, taking Minho on regular trips when it was safe. Arin ruled her empire with wisdom and strength, but she made time for her family. They were not a traditional family by anyone's standard, but they worked. The threats did not stop. Assassination attempts came every few months. Political enemies whispered and plotted, but Haeon was always there, protecting his son with fierce devotion. And Minho grew bright and brave, learning to navigate two worlds that both claimed him and rejected him. 1 year after Haeon had returned, they stood together on a balcony overlooking the palace gardens. Minho was below, teaching younger children about Earth constellations. His voice carried up to them, confident and kind. He will be a great leader someday, Arin said. If he chooses to be. We should let him choose his own path. I know, but I hope he chooses to stay, to rule. He could unite our peoples in ways I never could. Hyun watched their son, seeing the future in the boy's gestures and smile. Whatever he chooses, he will do amazing things, because he has your wisdom and my stubbornness. Arin laughed. A terrifying combination, the best kind. They stood in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, watching their son grow under alien stars. Hyun had spent 15 years running through space, searching for something he could not name. Now he knew what it was. Not freedom from responsibility. Not escape from expectations. Home. He had found home in the most unlikely place, with the most unlikely people. An alien queen who saw past his rough edges. A son who carried the best of both their worlds. A family built not from tradition, but from choice and love and impossible biology. The stars stretched endlessly above them. It's the same stars that had brought them together 5 years ago. But Haeon was not looking at them anymore. He was looking at the garden where his son played. At the woman beside him who had become his anchor and his heart. He was looking at his future. And for the first time in his life, he was not running from it. He was running toward it, with open arms and a full heart, ready for whatever came next. Because he was not alone anymore. He had Arin. He had Minho. He had purpose and love and something. Worth fighting for? The universe was vast and dangerous and full of unknowns. But none of that mattered, because he was home.